Yeah.
There might be some cold water.
He's going to be
Ready.
He's ready.
Thanks, guys. How are you?
Oh,
Good to see you.
good to see you too.
No, it's only 5 minutes on. No. Only showed her dog.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, I would rather. I know. I just think.
Well, you allow me to come into the building, I bring it to the building tomorrow. Oh, if I can go in with the dog in the building, I'll bring it to you guys.
Send back.
We'll put in motion.
Oh, you're gonna see it, when he get in the pouch, you're gonna see it. I have a little pouch. And
Okay.
he like, the carry on. You're gonna see in the carry on.
Oh.
All
I
right.
hope
Relax.
I'm hungry. I hope you guys don't mind, I do not get lunch, so I'm gonna.
Belle, if you would like walk, also we can grab some ice if you'd like.
Yeah, you want soda or any drink with the cold,
Wonderful.
we can get you some,
Thank you.
or snacks.
Right.
Right.
Thank y'all for coming.
So it's like a very small time.
I just miss Alex, you just
Yeah.
got it. He just left work.
Oh.
Now you can bring him.
I hate when that happens.
So, are we good? I
Yes.
think I heard that, sorry. So I do know last time we met, I know, you, kind of presented us, well, you did present us with a verbal, response to, some of those topics we had talked about. I know we've been in communication, with just some following up with some of the requests and so forth. So we do have a written counter for you, this afternoon. If we're good with that.
Okay.
All right. Let me grab that. Is it these? Nina and Dave, do you have one? So I'll just kind of walk through this and then clarifications or however we need to do that, we can proceed. So the first one is the first page really consists of just some general information. So I'll start on number 1 at the bottom of page 1, and where we have employees in the bargaining unit currently earning $15 an hour will receive a pay increase between 3 and 4.25, as indicated on the new salary schedule, which is A, which I believe is in the back. Was attached, okay. And that was due to the recent increase that they had just went due to the requirement to go to $15 an hour. And that's noted up there in the one of the whereas is kind of in the middle, so we kind of noted that. All other employees, you will see the grid that we have presented is at a 4.5% increase. And so you do see that also on Exhibit A. I know we had discussions, what we presented. I know that you had verbally rejected the number 3, the CDAs, being reclassified from an 8 to a 9, which is equal to a 10% pay increase. We really do, we've put it back in there as a part of our counter proposal back to you. The early childhood emphasis is something as part of our district strategic plan that is in place. It is an emphasis of our board and our superintendent. We've also reviewed the duties of our CDAs and really do support that increase in a pay grade. So we do have it back in there. Number 4 is a summary or a listing of those certifications which you had asked for. We did, I believe, add the CDAs that I don't think were necessarily put in there the last time I think was asked, and so we put it in there, the 5th bullet. Number 5, we did talk about, and I do know you verbally accepted the 80-20 split for the increase in healthcare costs. And then number 6 is we added the language that we have been talking about, and I know Lindsay as part of both of our the groups that we've been working with, We did go ahead and put language in here that we will continue to provide the free pre-K 3 for education for employees' children to sunset on June 30th, 2024, which is the sunset of this contract. The board will evaluate in good faith contracts with third-party vendors to review opportunities for expanding access to wraparound services for children and grandchildren of employees. The parties expressly acknowledge that the exploration of expanding opportunities for wraparound services does not suggest that there will ultimately be an agreement between the parties, only that further discussion will occur by the end of the 23-24 academic year. So we wanted to include that language in this proposal. So you do have our MOU and you have our salary grid over to you this afternoon.
Was that meant to sunset on 24 or 25?
24, the end of the contract.
Oh, I see, okay. Quick look, make sure I don't have any questions, but we will need to caucus, but I did want to.
Okay.
She had this costed out.
Yes. Which section would you like?
Which is I mean, whatever you have up to the total. Well, we could just, yeah.
I can list it all out, but I think we would need to list it out. Dave, do you have? No, I've got this one.
Number one,
Mhm.
one and two. Was 2.8 friends.
That's including French?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. 2.8, that's 2.8 with French. Okay.
The CDAs were 369, 369 or 389, 389,
Sorry,
389,000. It's on the other sheet.
And I think,
This one?
I can't remember what we said the last time about the value of number 4. It was, but I feel like there was a number at one point, and I'm sorry, I don't.
We've added in the, oh yeah, that's the big ticket, the 8450 every 5 years.
169.
Yeah, but that's not everything else here. I don't have it. For all the other employees.
Wait, wasn't it something like just like $5,000 or something like that, $10,000? I might be looking at the wrong figure.
yeah, I think you're thinking of the teachers.
And I had it written down for the CERS.
Just remember that quote is.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I remember that. I did have the 389.
Every 5 years. I forgot that. Oh, 8450 every 5 years. But I didn't cost that. So the certified OT. 60
That's okay. I feel like it was a relatively small
So
amount. I know
the
that was prior
the biggest one were the CDAs, and that was 8450 every 5 years.
Mhm.
The others are 600 here, 600 there, And it's every 2 years, some is every 3 years. Actually, all of them are every 2 years. So if you just give me a moment, we can get it for you.
Okay.
That was the other thing. So. These are the 2 years, all of these are the 2 years.
And the PESPA, I mean to interrupt y'all, but for number 5, I believe that we said that the PESPA increase was 171. Is that right for a number 5? 171, 120.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I should specify that, but that was for the employee, and then 718.5 for the employer. I remember, we talked about the value of the prepaid, though that wasn't something that we had as some setting, but I understand corresponds roughly to the way we've been treating it for the on the PCTA side. I know that was about $500,000 a year for all employees. I don't know what the PESPA portion of, I don't know that we can value that right yet.
Number 4 is approximately 6,000 per year.
About 6,000, okay. Per year, okay. That would be this year, okay. Okay, and I know that we need to caucus, but just to follow up, one of the pieces that is still outstanding on our side, I know you, like you said, you put the CDA, we rejected it, you put that back in, or extended it again. But I also don't, I don't see an item that corresponds with our number 3, which was looking at vacancies and in the ESP unit and providing for coverage pay for ESPs who are covering for other ESPs, even if a vacancy was eventually or a unit was, and I know that the unit allocation works differently on the support side, but if the unit was collapsed and we didn't have that, we no longer had that classified as a vacancy, what we were suggesting is that we would use the 10-day count as a marker for existing vacancies in the district, and that absences or just not filling those positions would be eligible for coverage pay. And I don't see that addressed here, so you're assuming.
So we are rejecting any language that addresses that specifically, but I will tell you, we heard loud and clear that there were questions, or again, it was a few meetings ago where we heard some examples from members and so forth regarding our PE assistants and our CDAs. And so Dean has been working on, we do have, and that's part of internal HR practices of the emergency sub pay and so forth. That's already in place for those employees who do qualify for that. But we do have, we've heard that loud and clear. And so we are working on implementing some expanded options for employees. Now that you may just briefly give some highlights.
So we currently have the emergency substitute units based on having 60 hours or more, and that's for the substitute. They can also sub for the assistants and CTA. So we are looking to expand that under the current Article 9, Section D, but to allow for emergency classroom assistant substitute. So for those that are PE assistants, so they have a high school diploma, and for our CDAs who have high school diploma, to allow for them to be emergency classroom assistant sub. So they could substitute if there was somebody else in that particular classroom, they would be able to substitute for that person. And I believe the rate of pay is at that time and a half. And so, they would expand that for those particular groups to go ahead and to do the subbing for classroom assistants and PD CDAs and PD assistants. And it would allow them to be an emergency classroom assistant to cover for that other person.
So let me be clear. So if a PE teachers is absent, and this, just for my clarification, if the teachers is out and they spread the classroom, they will get sub-pay.
So,
Like I said, we are three teachers and the assistant, she's out. I take half of her class and the teachers get half of the class. They will be compensated as getting sub-pay too.
so they don't, so emergency subs don't get the sub pay, they get the time and a half. So teachers get the sub pay, which is the $17.50. So if the PE teacher was out and I called in for a sub and I didn't have a substitute for that particular person, then they would utilize their rotation or however they do it. And if someone was not available, then they would use the emergency classroom sub. So I can't say that if I split the two necessarily, would they each get that
So
particular?
That's
But
what
I know
those
if
issues.
I had a PE assistant out and I was taking on, that PE assistant would qualify for the time and a half. If I was picking up that PE assistants, and let's say the teacher had some of them and the other PE assistant had
Yeah.
one. Or in the same model with the two CDAs.
So this is the issue. That's what we want to bring it in. And I get you what you're trying to say, but part of the problems too is when you had two teachers and a PE assistant with the CDA and the ESC teacher, and when they're out, they call in the classroom or they divide it, so they do not get the pay, like the sub pay, like the instructional get, they don't get nothing. And that's what we're trying to say,
Yeah.
is for them to be allowed when you pay for the instructional. And we still, well, I'll just put it completely, we still covering the classroom and we are dividing, we're having more students to allow them to get to part of the money. That's what we are trying.
So I'm sorry,
So
Yeah,
you're
but-
not using to cover for the teacher, the classroom assistants can only cover for
Six,
CDAs and PE assistants, they can cover for the teacher.
So that's why,
I
that's
mean,
what
something
that's,
that we could-
I just,
that's
I'm
two
not
things
totally-
different.
I'm not, I guess I'm not, there's a piece that I'm not getting and I'm sure that it's here, I'm just not picking it up. So under, in the contract, it shall not be the practice of the board to use members of the unit as substitutes for certificated personnel. In such an emergency, employee substitute should be paid at 1.5 times their normal salary. That exists. Is what you're saying that you're working on extending that?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is what you're saying that you're working on extending that to support?
So to opening it up for our PE assistants and our CDAs. So right now, PE assistant, depending on the particular employee, may or may not be eligible to become an emergency sub. Emergency sub requires 60 hours. Classroom assistants are the high school diploma. So opening it up so that a CDA, if the other CDA is out, that person could get. So in other words, is that if somebody else coming in and the two CDAs could cover for each.
And I get that, but we're still going back to the same issue, that's what I'm trying to clarify. If you have two teachers, we'll stay stuck with the PS, with the PE job description. You have two PE teachers, you have a PE assistant. One of the PE teachers is out. The PE assistants get half of the classroom of the teacher. And only one, the teacher, instructional teacher, get the sole pay. And the support staff or the PE assistant do not get compensated. That's what we're trying to say. When that really happen, we want them to be compensated because they're still taking classroom students for the another teachers is out because they're divided between two. Between the PE assistant and the teacher. So that's why, yes. So it's two classes and only one person's get the compensation. That's what we're trying to put that language in there. Saying that happened with the CDA. When you had two, one get paid or nobody get paid because they're not qualified. So I get you what you're saying, but I want to make sure that another part is to get compensated when the The another group, I had to take half of the students.
They will, in this.
Well,
That's what I'm.
Well, get it on this, but the PS system will not get compensated if our teachers is out. But we have to make it clear. That's what I wanted.
Not repeat, not,
No.
not in the question that she's saying. She's saying if the PE teacher is out
Perfect.
and I have another PE teacher. There's 1750 for the teachers, right?
Mhm.
That teacher gets that full
Amount.
1750. That teacher should be taking
All of it, right. If the teacher doesn't take on,
She gets.
what she's saying is, will the CDA, who's taking half the class,
We can do that, yes, absolutely,
Yeah,
as long as the
they
teacher
get
gets, yes. So the answer is
They
yes.
split it, right?
Yes.
They can split it,
We
yeah.
can do that.
So
We can do, yeah,
that's what.
yeah.
our-
We would have to, what I would do is lay out exactly those scenarios.
Yes,
But yes.
that's,
we
so
can do that.
we got clear on that. That's what the part of the stuff.
Yeah.
So, okay. So why? If, okay, so, but if you're, so two questions about that. Why only CDAs and PE assistants? And, what,
I would say the other ones generally would qualify for emergency, so O'Hara would qualify to be an emergency substitute. PE assistants and CDAs don't always qualify to be an emergency substitute.
because they don't have this, okay,
Because I-
but but
But it's also covering class.
Mhm.
It's also,
Covering club,
those
yes,
are the positions that are covering
students.
class students. I mean, it is different than a.
Heroin and the,
Yeah, who might be traveling or who might, so those are the two that we can identify that are definitely, and we've heard it. We've heard it. This is something, I mean, again, trying to work on situations that have been maybe an area of concern over the last few years. So this is why we're bringing these situations and seeing what we can do to expand forward.
okay, but, yeah, right, but that's not written here.
No, because we have it, we are basing it off of the language and already in the contract, and it is a process that is in place. I don't have in the contract the process and the procedures that we utilize in HR that we already do for our coverage of classes and so forth, but the rate of pay is absolutely identified here.
Okay,
so there should be an allowance in the contract.
well, and I get why. I get why that.
Let me
Sorry,
make a
I'm
suggestion
missing it.
that, why don't you caucus on the everything, and then we will go back and look at the procedures that have been written, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, because and I apologize, I'm still not, I'm missing, I'm like, I know I appear to be the only person who's missing something. But I don't understand how what you're describing is already in place. Like it's already happening, we're just expanding it to some people that might not otherwise qualify. I see this whole section of the contract is in case of an emergency, in such an emergency, they will sub, but it's specifically for certificated personnel. And what we are, so I can see there being I get it with like highly qualified, like you have, like someone in order to be able to sub has to have the 60 hours according to the regulations around some funding sources. But that's not contractual. And so, right? So I don't, because unless you're referring to another part of the contract that I'm missing, that's not contractual. And so taking what is already designated as this person is eligible for this sub pay because of, according to, the requirements of this funding source or this program. What you're talking about doing, I think, is putting into place what amounts to an extension, making more roles eligible for it. But that's a policy, right? That's like an HR thing that you're working on expanding a policy.
We're looking at expanding who can be an emergency sub. We already have a PE assistant who is absent, calls in for a sub, and that is a classroom assistant. So But I, as the PE assistant, I'm not a sub because I don't have that. So this it broadens that.
Okay. So, okay, so where is what you're referring to written?
Well, the procedures that they have been working on.
We have procedures for emergency subs that are their written documentation as well. So you get recommended, you complete something, we turn that into the sub team. It goes in, there's a coding in terms, so that all we need to utilize this emergency sub, and we have this coded.
And this all, when you talk about recommending, are you just verifying the fact that someone has the credentials that satisfies the funding source? Oh, otherwise, like how?
No, it's not funny. So it said that they have the credentials and that they, because they have 60 hours.
60 hours.
Take over a class.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, there's just a leap that I'm somehow failing to make. I don't know what it is. Can't put my finger on it. Yeah, yeah.
I just need the other one now. I don't have
But so what you're working on is just for pre-K, not pre-K, sorry,
Assistant.
CDAs, PE assistants. What you're describing now, are our MBAs already included? Like, I'm just using an example, or you said MBA or paraprofessional, like how?
So I think you're looking at two different things, right? I think it's the ability to be an emergency sub. That is what the beginning of the school year, we put it out, our principals share, if you're wanting to be, if they're not already, and you have somebody who you want to be on call as a potential emergency sub, right? Then we ask them to go ahead and submit that so they can be cleared. So in the event that there is, just as listed, there's an emergency. What happens sometimes is that those individuals may not be eligible to be an emergency sub, but they are eligible. That's what we're doing, is we're expanding that ability to be an emergency classroom assistant, which means the same pay, right? At the time and a half, right? Or if they're called upon, which would allow them, we think, some of our PE assistants or somebody who may not have that, to be able to then serve in that capacity in order to cover those additional students that might come into their circle during PE time or whatever, or CDA. So we're expanding that to be able to allow those employees to be compensated for that additional work load that might come in with that.
So what I'm working with is, I think of a NINA or a Paul B. And what we're consistently hearing is that that classrooms are understaffed, or that you might have a classroom over here that's understaffed, so we're moving an MBA from this class to this class to cover. Or if you have two and we don't have anybody to move, then what you have is one MBA doing the work of two MBAs. What happens to them?
So this is not,
Yeah, and
they would not be, unless they were an emergency sub for a teacher.
And again, I
Or
think that's a
presence.
changing, and I think that's an assignment for the day, right? We're changing this, it could be, and we're talking
Yeah, send them
hypothetically
one
here,
from
right?
here.
So I don't know the situation.
If it doesn't
But
occur, if it doesn't result in an increase in work, assignments can be changed, we recognize that.
Right, but I don't know what you're, like, again, it's hypothetically asking that, and 9M Paul B and our centers are very different. I fully understand that. But if you're looking at two classrooms and I have the number of students, most of those students might be absent that day, but you've got a whole, I'm gonna reassign that assistant over to that MBA or the paraprofessional over to that classroom. Because I don't know if that's what you're talking about, or if it's more of if you're talking more of a permanent situation, right? So,
I mean, it could be, I get, and that's a little, what makes it a little harder because you're talking about the same phenomenon in the instructional unit and the support unit. What I'm thinking about, and this is just one example, is of a classroom at Colby that has had 2 MBAs assigned to it.
okay,
But there's a, right, but one is out,
okay,
either like on a day, for a day,
right,
or there's 2 MBAs that are assigned to it and one is a vacancy.
okay,
And it's an ongoing absence, basically, like what
okay.
then happened? Because that then the remaining, I don't mean, hey, we need somebody over here, we're gonna move you.
And I will tell you that it really depends on the ratio. I don't want to sit here and say this is the situation because again, as we look at vacancies and so forth, I guarantee you our ESC team is looking at that every single day and shifts are being made and so forth, you know, and it is about the ratio of students. So we could be talking about a unit. And I get it, like, I get what the concerns are, but I might be looking at a unit where it was originally scheduled for 15 students or 10 students or whatever it is, and 3 are showing up, right? So there might be a vacancy for an MBA, but I don't have a need for it there, but I'm understanding also that there could be a classroom with 10 students, there were supposed to be 2 MBAs and there's 1 there and there should have been 2. I get that fully, you know, whatever. And I understand that's when people are moving around, right? And okay, well, this one doesn't need, it's kind of all hands on deck. And I get it, that's what you're asking for. But for us to put something in right now for that, I'm not sure that's what we're saying it's not.
And I can get what you're trying to say. It is, if you have 2 MBA, let's say we had 2 MBA and one, there's supposed to be 2 MBA
Yes.
per classroom.
Okay,
One is out, do not call the substitute. You take one out of the classroom, just so you let one teachers with one sub, with 1 MBA
right,
to cover another classroom because that they need that another extra hand,
right,
an MBA.
yeah,
So that's the question. That person that I have to go to cover another classroom because they really need that MBA will get so paid.
so.
That,
here's
and
my-
I understand.
Yeah, I do understand. You mean the MBA who went over to the other classroom?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so compare
Because-
that to where we were talking about the PE assistant, right?
Mhm.
And the reason for the additional pay is because I have additional students in front of me.
Mhm.
That MBA moving to another classroom doesn't necessarily have more students, so I want to make sure that we're being, you know, equitable across, however, and I was gonna say one more thing, but it went right out of my head, so.
I can see what you mean about that, just reassigning someone, obviously, as long as it's within the scope of their existing
Right.
job. I mean, I understand that. It's, what we want to do is make sure that people are compensated for extra work.
Yeah.
So if, and one of the only ways that we can quantify that is either beyond their time, their regular work time, or within their regular work time, but in terms of the quantity of the number of students that they're responsible for. So it seems as though maybe the way to quantify something like this, the scenario that we're talking about, is a lot around the ratios. Like you said, if we
But
went
I'm
beyond
not, you
it,
know, and then I agree, you know, I'm just, every student is different. I think everybody sitting in this room would probably sit and tell you that there are students out there that, while they're, that need is very great, and it might be one student, but you know what, I need a one, that's why we have one-on-one assistance, right? So I think we need to be, again, we need to be able to put something in place that can be, followed. One other thing that, you know, is so important with our emergency subs is, and one thing we've realized is, you know, part of the process is that position has to be submitted for a substitute to pick up. It can't simply be, hey, I'm gonna be absent. Okay, so I'll take that class, which is great, but I'm gonna tell you something. If anything, we have a very robust sub pool right now, and we have extremely high fill rates. So we are calling our substitutes and they're there. Now, I don't know why they're not picking up necessarily on our associate positions and things like that, and we're working on
You
that.
don't know why?
I mean, come on, I took.
You don't know why?
Um,
I can tell you why.
but, well, Okay, so that's something that's our next step. And I tell you right now, our center principals are really working hard on trying to fill these positions. You've seen
And it's
some of the
hard,
things
and it's
that-
hard for the centers to people to take an MBA because they need all the students and their behavior. And when they go in and they see what they have to go through, they don't want to go back
But I do
and
think,
cover that.
and I'm gonna reiterate this, because I think it is very important to recognize that, it is about the culture at our schools, and it is about the schools and the feeling of the family and the community and so forth. And so we've got some really good things going on, and I want that to just kind of keep increasing, because we want our, those, potential applicants to know about that, and that it's a good, some of our, most of our places are really good places to work and to come in there and to be there. But
Yeah,
but we understand we need everybody's support in that, and we need the people there to make that a well-run machine.
And
so
it
to
is
speak.
nothing about the administrator of the school. It
No,
is
but-
just a challenge that we have now with the students working, and some people they're not prepared or mentally prepared or
Right.
physically prepared to work with this easy centers. And I say nothing wrong, it's just a reality.
Which
you
is
know,
what, yeah, and I fully agree, and I think
And
what,
that's
I
all what it
think
is.
the leaders are understanding that, and we're trying to figure out what else can we provide. Because I think our people that we have are wonderful, and they want to do a good job, we've just got to give them this, we've got to help them get those skills moving forward, so.
And part of the MBA, let me go back, because it just not, because I understand some, you can be moving around to do different jobs. Or sometimes when they move one MBA for one classroom to another one.
Yeah.
When the another person is out, it depends on the high need or the needed of the child.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have to have, so that's what we want to make sure. And I can get what you're saying, to make sure if that person go into the classroom, maybe by the administrator to say yes, because I've been, and I've been Poby, I've been Sandra, I've been all of them. But when one person is out and I had to come out of my classroom to cover Lindsay classroom because it's more needed the kids,
Right.
and I had to leave mine, it's more work because it's more intense. It's not, so that's what she was trying to say. Maybe that person would, it's depend on the high need work,
Sometimes,
it
yeah.
should be compensated depending on the classroom.
But sometimes, right?
Well,
So it's
that's-
sometimes, it is not.
Not
all the time.
currently,
And so
yes.
you can look at numbers, you can't necessarily look at needs, because
Mm.
that's sometimes. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
well, why don't we let you look at it,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back? You're good?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
and I need. I'm ready for another tattoo. I'm gonna get my tattoo though. I want to have to see. I'm gonna get this one inside.
I'll send out a reminder tomorrow for everybody. Thursday, I'll send out.
That room up there.
Where is it?
I'm so sorry. I was like, are you?
No, it's terrible.
Oh,
You have to leave it open for like a day
control it.
and just it's because of where it is on the air conditioner.
Uh-huh.
We cannot,
So, sorry, I was just like, going,
No.
I can't say it.
No, it's way too cold.
and the thing is, like Lisa said, the only
Leave it
way
open and
is
smart
2
work, it'd be
days,
really nice.
2 days, open the door so it can be kind of nice.
Wow.
It is ridiculous. I go there with my heater. So I can
I
feel
can
it on my
understand
feet.
that. Yes, yes.
Yeah, you got your little.
No, you guys laugh at me, but I cannot be there without a heater. They just want to look at me like a popsicle, like.
Thank y'all for coming back in. Unfortunately, I really have to look at the numbers a little bit more in order to kind of compare it to where we are and get an idea of what the total value is. And so
So where are you? I mean, we're at 4.5% for everyone. The graduated on those that are 15.
yeah.
What is it that you, because I know you mentioned that too last time about where you were. I don't know where you are.
Where our most recent
Because-
is 5.9. It would be 5.9 for those who are currently at 15, by bringing them to 1590,
Right.
6. So it's a 10th of a percentage point difference. But I have that costed out at about a $3.3 million difference, not with fringe, but 3.3 without fringe. Which is why when I look at the CDA, the provision number 3 about reclassifying the CDAs, while certainly that would be good for CDAs, if we're looking at that being worth approximately $400,000, I do think that particularly because our CDAs would still be getting the base increase that we negotiate this year, that value, I think, could potentially make a decently meaningful difference for the entire unit. So, I don't feel prepared to accept, I'm just not prepared to accept, it. I would like to see, here's my concern with the draft that you're doing with, addressing this, the sub-pay issue. And we've talked about this at the table before, about when we have a proposal and using the information that we have, here's the way we'd like to proceed, and that is, rejected. But then there's this development of another solution to the same problem that falls outside of the bargaining process. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing to work at, but it should be something that we're working together on, which is why I think that because it's, properly negotiated. And so it'll help me, I think, to see what your ideas are on that, but it'll also help me to understand how that is fundamentally different from what we have proposed. And so therefore why it wouldn't be included in this agreement. If it's a term, if it has to do with compensation, it should be, we should be negotiating it at the table. And that also would bring a value to it. I know it's more of a projection than it is just an accounting for it, but it's all part of the same process. So I'd like to see what you've been working on to get an idea of how that might meet it, even if that does meet the concern that we brought up. And I know we're all sitting here on the same page and understanding the concern. Then I'm not saying that couldn't be a good solution, but it should be edified in the agreement. More so than.
So we think it is edified in terms of the amount, time and a half, when a support employee is acting as a sub. The idea was to expand the eligibility of who can be a sub. And as we were talking about all these scenarios and the language, there's too many variables to try to commit that to the contract. But we have some language in the contract that we think by procedure, we can agree to expand the people eligible to receive the money that's already addressed in that article. So that's why we wanted to proceed by expanding it and documenting a procedure that has worked. It's just we're gonna have more people that are eligible for it. But some of the scenarios that you discussed, we were batting them around upstairs, and there are just too many variables that we could consider trying to edify in the contract.
And I understand that. I mean, I know that this is, this year is one big variable, but they, what's addressed, I guess that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe I just need to see it in writing because I still don't understand where I'm not quite getting it. What's addressed in the contract is support covering for instructional, support subbing for instructional. What we've asked for is support subbing for support, which is a common enough occurrence that we hear about it a great deal, particularly in things like centers. And that's why once I see your draft, it might be that that's addressed there, but that's outside of that would be, I'm not saying it's bad, but it is outside of what the contract already provides for, because the contract specifically says support covering for instructional. So making more people eligible for that is really just expanding procedures. There's nothing that limits their eligibility in the contract. It just says that, in case of such, or in case of such emergency, this is what happens. But the idea of people only being eligible for it if they have 60 hours and all that stuff, that's procedural. That doesn't have anything to do with our contract. So I can understand an expansion of that on your side, but outside of the work that we do, but because it has an impact on the compensation of our unit, I do think it properly has to be negotiated.
The problem is, though, is the various scenarios that we kind of discussed. Most of it is assignment and other duties and moving people around within the school.
Yeah.
So that's really difficult to try to get our hands around. And, there's unintended consequences that when we can't even articulate all the different possible scenarios at the school, we're not going to try to commit it to language.
I think, and I can understand there being unintended consequences. I guess just from our perspective, the unintended consequences might be paying someone maybe more than what you might say they deserve in that circumstance. I'm not going to call that a loss. If ultimately people that are doing the hardest work or the most direct work with some of our most medically fragile students, I just think of that as an example. On the off chance that one day they happen to get paid perhaps not for as much extra responsibility as they might otherwise be dealing with on any given day. Yeah, that might happen.
So
But I don't
we
think
don't
that
know if it's
precludes
extra,
us.
that's what we have to grapple with. Is it extra responsibility or is it a different responsibility?
Yeah,
And
different
so-
and right. And we're not, like I said, we understand that assignment is the prerogative of the site administrator. We understand that that's not what we haven't been asking for. For that additional compensation to be extended for a reassignment. And it seems as though now I agree with you, Paula, that perhaps ASOP, I mean, we might be saying it differently, but entering the vacancies, entering the absences into the system is critical. And we know, and I'm sure y'all know, but we know that that's not always done, consistently. And that is something that we would have to push for. And maybe that might give more form to it. But I really like the chance to punch around on some of these numbers and get an idea of if we're close enough that with some tweaking, we might be able to land. But like I said, like y'all know, right now we were at prior to your counter, we were at 5.9 or 6, which is pretty even, pretty close. We also just as a format, and you'll see, I mean, I've used the calculator that you gave or that you sent, Dave, so it'll look the same. We just wouldn't agree to the idea of it adding a level F that what instead, because we think two things. One, you know, you always want to move forward rather than backwards, but I think that we think that there is something very important that people need to, like our veteran employees need to see movement up. So staying on level G, even though their actual rate changes, doesn't, I don't think, have the same sort of impact as they have like moving up to level H, for example, having additional value built into that level and having an additional level at the very end, a level B, I guess, would not only value the work that people have already done, but it also gives them something to continue to, you know, to see some value in sticking with the
So
scale. and
I'll
moving
kind of
up
go
the scale.
back to where, and we started dropping that level, and it wasn't always dropped, but, and this is pre me. I know the rate came in, I know Mel, you've been here, I know some other people have been here, but the intent was not always to drop a level, right? It was that increase would be placed on, you know, on that grid. The reason, and I think we explained it before, and I think it's important too, Lindsay, I agree with what you're saying. We had the same thought, right? You know, it is that we've gotten used to it, something we've gotten used to, right? Always moving up. But I also hear loud and clear, just with the minimum raise of $15 that we're required to do, and people who were just hired on, as opposed to people who were hired on last year, it does start separating. I'm sorry, the people who are hired on right now and then who will be hired. It does put some separation between those people, because that's what we're also hearing is that, you know, I've been working here and I'm making the same as somebody who's just hired. I mean, we hear that loud and clearly.
We hear
so
that more.
We hear that more than just a understanding that, look at yours, you are going up 4.5. You're going to remain, because what we've heard too is people don't know what level they're on. They don't, you know, they know about it now for the 2 weeks during negotiation and voting, but then it goes out of there. Then they're talking about their hourly rate and they're talking, and which they should be.
Yeah.
So to say that, I don't think that is as what we're hearing is as important as showing some separation between the new.
That's what we're not hearing. We're hearing why we're going backwards, not forwards.
So you need to say to them, you're not.
You're going up.
Let's actually show you the
Because
grid.
when we create this, the labels or the letters on the top
Yes.
is for them to see where they're moving.
The
Every year
levels
they
at
get
the
it.
top are showing their hourly rate on the pay grade that they're.
No, the pay grade is stand in the bottom, the letters on the top is just for them to see when they're moving. When we're talking about that and they see the letter back, like going backwards, they think that we're going backwards. And yes, now we're not going backwards, but if we keep the letters, they're thinking they're going backwards. This
Then
is
you
the way.
tell them you're not going backwards.
Well-
You're staying the same letter, but you're going up 4.5.
But and I understand about, I'm like, I just have to make this point again. We're limited in our ability to communicate with the entire bargaining unit. We just don't have the ability to regularly communicate with the unit regarding it.
You have building reps, right?
You're building reps.
I don't
Not
have
in some
that.
cases, not necessarily every case, but we are working
We have
really
a
hard to do
website.
that. But a simple solution to that problem has been rejected. And so we are limited in what we can do. And I will tell you as well, that just regarding, like, for example, with the health insurance, that we routinely get questions saying people are convinced, no matter how explicit we are in the communications, what do you mean our health insurance is going up 20%? It doesn't, like, we can slice it any which way. This is the work we do and we live in and live and breathe. And my God, I wish I could get that out of my head more than I actually can. But for the people that we negotiate for, they're not necessarily leaning into it as much. What we'd like to do is make it as clear as possible that they actually are seeing that movement, and that even your proposal, your initial proposal to move it in this way was starting to address compression that was sort of created last year beyond any of our control. And the structure that y'all proposed last year that we ultimately worked within was a good way to start to address it, but where it's going even further this year. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but they will be perceived as moving backwards if we create this level F, even though that no one currently on it will be at level F. If they're not moving up, they're not feeling that increase
And yes, people
or
feel,
perceiving it.
and
let's
yes, and
just say that.
people fear they have what we call pick on years or years experience, whatever heck we wanted to call it. And it's true, because in the past, every time we got paid increase, it was used to go on a minimum. We used to have low, minimum, and high. And every time we do bargaining, all the increase is used to stay in the minimum. Never went to the middle or the high. So until we switch, because I did it, we switch it. Now, the people with seniority or pick on years, I see in the difference break out between the new employee coming in and how much they're making. If we do not did it that way, nobody will be increasing. I can tell you for myself with 26 years. Somebody new making more than, almost making more than I do with 25 years in the district. Somebody else new coming in, they're making maybe $2 more than I do. So, but we make this difference, and going back to put and keeping a letter back again, you don't see it that way, but everything is mental, is mentally, they're thinking they're going backwards, and we can't, because they need to see that they're progressing.
I think it especially is pertinent to this unit because the vast majority of our employees in this unit are on G. I mean, like by a long shot. And so the way that they perceive their movement up the pay scale is like 5 times as impactful as what we see in any other level or on any other level. So I want to be able to mess around with these numbers some more. And if I could see, if you would send me the, what you've been working on that,
I'd rather you meet. and
Sort of the
discuss it,
substation.
not just send it.
or can meet, that's fine. Yeah,
All right.
thank you. We have availability this week. Pretty much every week, every day. If there's another time that y'all are able to meet, obviously, and then we're all trying to move through this as quickly as possible. School board meeting tomorrow, I know. We've got availability on Wednesday.
I'm not available Wednesday.
Okay.
Nor Thursday. And I'm not meeting Friday afternoon, sorry.
Monday?
Is there a reason, we meet earlier in the day? When we do get a meet, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to schedule it tonight, so. But
Yeah,
is there a
well, we
reason
could,
why-
we would just need a release, for Scotty and for Tony, who was not able to be here tonight, but she generally is sitting at the table.
Well, why don't you get with Dina tomorrow to go over that, and then we'll have to look at our schedule. And
Okay,
Yeah, that we can.
I can text you. Or Wednesday.
okay.
Yeah, we don't know what time and we.
All right, here's your sign-in sheet.
Oh, we get.